Hello and welcome back to another episode of Strong Collectors Comics. My name is Jordan and I'm joined today as ever by my plucky co-host Dakota. And today we are doing a little bit of construction, if you will, and we are imagining the Mount Rushmore of Marvel characters. Now, Dakota, there's a lot of iconic Marvel characters. There's characters we love, we have special attachments to, but we're thinking of the four characters that really, whether it's comics, movies, across the board, deserve to be up there on that mountain, right? And there's going to be three that we definitely agree on, and a contestable fourth. Maybe that's Teddy Roosevelt up there. We're wondering, did he do enough at that time to get up on that mountain? But it's up for debate, and he'll be up there anyways. So, as we get started there, Dakota, who is your first pick that's got to be up on the Mount Rushmore of Marvel?
I'm going to say what I would assume is probably, as far as Marvel goes, by far the most popular character is got to be Spider-Man. So Spider-Man's
Yes.
got to be up on that mountain. I think as far as, you know, DC characters, I think Superman and Batman may be more popular than Spider-Man, but within Marvel, I don't think there's any character that just the casual fan would know
Mm-hmm.
at least a majority of the backstory with the radioactive spider, Uncle
Right.
Ben,
Mm-hmm.
all that. I think, and even when you ask kids to adults, I think probably the most common answer as far as like what's your favorite superhero is gonna be Spider-Man. So
Yeah.
I think when I think of Marvel, Spider-Man's one of the first I think of.
Yeah. I'd say he's, I mean, I guess I don't know the data, but I think it's probably overall been the most like money making character for Marvel, right? Whether it's
Mm-hmm.
merchandise, comics, of course, the movies, like you said, I think even the common person who has no connection to comics at all uh, could tell you stuff about Spider-Man, or at least like
Right.
explain what he is, what's his thing, all that kind of stuff. And
I mean, when
yeah,
talking merchandise too, I think again, I don't know exactly the data, but I would assume like we have our main channel is talking action figures. I don't think there is an action figure more produced even across like Marvel and DC. I think
yeah,
Spider-Man probably holds the number one spot of the most
mm-hmm.
toys made of that character as
Yeah.
far as comic books.
Yeah, I think so. And then I mean, yeah, even getting into like the modern era of the movies, like how big those
Hmm.
Spidey movies were for uh, comic movies in general, but I mean, especially that character. So, yeah, I definitely think, and Spidey's my personal favorite, but I think the facts, the situation trumps my personal bias towards Spidey. So I agree with you. I'm definitely gonna put Spidey up there with you as well. My second pick is gonna have to be Wolverine. Now, I think Wolverine is a character very similar to Spider-Man in that way, right? Comic fans love him, but I think the general audience general, even if you're not part of the audience, knows things about Wolverine, or you could kind of identify his traits. Do you think that's
Hmm.
fair?
Yeah, I think so, especially with the claws, even probably the math. I mean, I think the claws are by far the most like recognizable. Like I think most
Mm-hmm.
kids in school probably are putting three pencils in between their fingers
Right.
and being Wolverine. Um, I mean, I was just watching Transformers the other day. They're in the room
Mm-hmm.
where they're gonna like bring the cell phone to life, make it a
Mm-hmm.
transformer, and there's scratch marks on the wall. And one of the people says like, "Oh, you've had Freddy Krueger up in here," and then the other person corrects him, "No, those are three claws. That's Wolverine."
That's Wolverine. Right.
So
Yeah. I
even in a
remember.
Transformers movie, they're mentioning Wolverine.
Right. Yeah. And you had plenty of when you were training me in the ways of trying to make me fit. Your Wolverine stretches, I mean, those are things that I think even I was telling somebody about that recently and they knew exactly, what I was thinking of, the pose, the character, all that. So I think, yeah, that alone, those facts of like people get the reference, people love Hugh Jackman in those movies. But again, I think if you were asking people to name top superheroes, that would be a pretty likely one to come up. So, yeah, I think Wolverine definitely is going up there for me. Even at, whether you agree or not, if he should be in 30 comics a month, Dakota, but he's there. But I think he's earned his spot.
I'm gonna say the next one that needs to go up on the mountain, and this one probably so far is the most controversial, or you could argue with me the most on this one. But I think that Iron Man should be up there. I think, especially, maybe 50 years ago, people would have had a lot less of an idea of who it is. But recently, I think with the MCU and all of that, I
Hmm.
think especially like Robert Downey Jr. has propelled the character into be. I think if you asked people who their favorite character from the MCU movies is, I think they would probably say, or a good amount of people would say Iron Man. And
Hmm.
so much so that Robert Downey Jr. is coming back to play Doctor Doom. So
That's right.
the fans love him that much that they can't let him go.
Right.
Um, so yeah, I think Iron Man's got to be up there, right?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I think even pre MCU, that would have been a very different thing. I don't think even when we were growing up, I was like, Iron Man, I liked him, but I wouldn't have picked him as like my top characters in this sense.
Sure.
I don't think. And I remember reading one time they did polls like before Iron Man came out, and most people were like, he's a robot, right? But it's
Hmm.
like, so I think that shows how much most people now would tell you, oh no, it's Tony Stark. Oh, he's a billionaire. He builds suits, whatever. So I think, yeah, in that sense, the movies for sure elevated him. And then I think you've seen him more in comics, merchandise, all that kind of stuff. And I think will stay that way, whether or not Robert Downey Jr. ever returns as Iron Man in any way, or they continue with that character in movies. I think that's kind of like built up
Hmm.
his status that I think will stay that way for
Yeah.
the
And
foreseeable
I guess
future.
going back in comics, like he is a founding member of the Avengers. So that's
Mm-hmm.
a pretty big deal. And I think, from that point, there was important stories in comics like Demon in a Bottle, stuff like that, that were,
Mm-hmm.
I don't know, maybe
Yeah.
groundbreaking for comics. But
Right.
like you said, even pre MCU, there wasn't many stories that I can remember. I mean, Civil War was probably the
Mm-hmm.
biggest. Iron Man, like where Iron Man's a big deal.
Right.
Um, going up against like the heroes that didn't want to register. So I thought,
Right.
when we were younger, I thought that was like very. I was almost like against Iron Man. I would have been like, no, you can't put Iron
Yeah,
Man
I
up on
actually
that
kind of
wall.
hated
He's
Iron Man at that time
right.
in my
Yeah.
childhood, Dakota. That was very formational for me. So
True.
yeah, I had to work through that when Iron Man came out, and I was like, I didn't like this guy, but now I'm
Hmm.
starting to. So
Yeah.
maybe other people had that as well. So when we get to our fourth, I think we might have a little bit of disagreement. But who is your uh, thought for your potential fourth on that,
I
Dakota?
mean, I'm gonna say for the fourth that I think deserves to be carved up in the mountain is going to be Captain America. I think similarly to Iron Man, the MCU really propelled the character forward. But I think even
Mm-hmm.
before that, you had like when he first came out, like World War II times, he's punching Hitler in
Yeah,
the face. I think people would
it's true.
definitely not argue that he should be up on the mountain then.
Right.
Then, he maybe declines in popularity. He cools off a little bit in the ice.
I
Then
like
we
that.
we thaw him out, bring him back. I think he's just one of those like, if you're gonna build your Avengers team and you need
Right.
a solid leader, Captain
Mm-hmm.
America's probably the best leader in Marvel. I mean, you could maybe argue that Cyclops, but I think he's the top. I think Captain America, he's nobody beats him as far as leader,
Yeah.
tactician,
Mm-hmm.
experience, especially rallying the troops, kind
Right.
of bringing that morale up.
Yeah. Yeah. I think Cap, I mean, my instinct for sure within comics is to put Cap up there. And I think even in movies, again, most people know Captain America now after the MCU and everything there. Um, so I do see the argument for Cap, and I want to agree with it. My other thought as a potential sub in would be the Hulk. And again, I don't think that's necessarily in the sense of a leader, whatever, but I think in general popularity. Most people, again, it's another one. You're gonna know Hulk, right? Kids like playing as Hulk. People like the idea of hulking out, or I think you hear those kind of phrases.
Hmm.
Um, and then like the '70s, you had the Lou Ferrigno show. I think that was pretty big time to have a big Marvel character. Like I think that for sure helped the popularity of Hulk. Um, but I just think over the years, being a very enduring character across most platforms, um, I don't know. I'm tempted to put Hulk on there, and I'll maybe just to have a little bit of disagreement with you, Dakota. I'll slide him up there instead of Cap. But I see the argument for both for sure.
Yeah,
What do you
I
feel about
think
Hulk though?
I think you're probably right with just how Hulk is a part of just the common language, and maybe my Captain America is swayed being a United States citizen. So I think there's that patriotic part of
Mm,
like you know I guess if Mount Rushmore is going to be built in the United States, maybe Captain America has a better shot. If we're
Right.
going globally, maybe Hulk
Mm,
resonates a little bit more with the
that's
non-US
true. You're right.
citizens.
Yeah.
So I could see that. And like you said with Wolverine, like I use like Wolverine terms in my coaching. I've definitely
Hmm.
used a lot of like Hulk smash with ropes or balls, things like that.
Right.
So, and even then, it's like everybody knows, whether they read comics, watch the movies, or whatever, they know what Hulk smash means. Like throw this into the
Hmm.
ground really hard or
Right.
hit this really hard. So
Yeah. A-
I can see the argument for Hulk for sure.
Well, and add some variety. I do think people like the idea of the brute character,
Hmm.
the gentle giant. He's all the whole complexity, right? He can't really control himself, but he's also trying to, do the right thing. And I do think that idea as a character resonates with people as just like general complexity, but also the human element, I think is pretty cool. That is what we've got for our Mountain Rushmore of Marvel. You can let us know. Are we way off? Should any of those guys be up there? Who do you think should be on the Mountain Rushmore of Marvel? Let us know in the comments, as always. So please be liking, sharing, and subscribing. And until next time, stay strong.